I'm back with another album review. Today's review is on the soundtrack for Natural Born Killers. That's right, I'm reviewing the soundtrack for an Oliver Stone film. Granted, I've only seen the movie once, and I actually enjoyed it. I should probably get around to rewatching it given how controversial and violent it is. It also gave me some inspiration when writing the Hell's Archangel stories. Anyways, the soundtrack was produced, compiled, and conceived by Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails fame. And this is actually the first soundtrack he ever worked on. The executive producer was Bud Carr. The engineers were Chris Vrenna and Leo Carrera. And the editor was Charlie Clusser. The soundtrack was released on August 23rd, 94 on Nothing Records and Interscope Records. It was manufactured by Atlantic Records. And now let's talk about the songs. The intro for the soundtrack is Waiting for the Miracle Edit by Leonard Cohen. This is the first of two songs that Leonard has on the soundtrack. The next track is Shit List by L7. I mentioned in my review of Bricks Are Heavy that this is my favorite L7 song, and it's fucking awesome that the song was included on the soundtrack. It's also my favorite song in the whole soundtrack. After that is Moon Over Green County, edit by Dan Zanes. I'm not really familiar with Dan Zanes, to be honest. Next up is Rock and Roll N-Word by Patti Smith. I can't say the actual word because I'll get in trouble if I do. This version is the Flood remix, by the way. Up next is Sweet Jane by Cowboy Junkies. They said it was made for the soundtrack. We followed up with You Belong to Me by Bob Dylan. It's pretty interesting that they decided to include a Bob Dylan song on here. That's followed by The Trembler by Duane Eddy. This is an edit made for the soundtrack. Right after that is Burn by Nine Inch Nails, which was released as a single in '94. You know damn well you're doing something right when your soundtrack has at least one Nine Inch Nails song. A music video was made, and there's a link in the description. The following track is Route 666. This has dialogue from Robert Downey Jr. and Brian Burton. The track after that is Totally Hot. This has an edit of Compendo Rojo by Remy Ongala and Orchestra Super Metal. I can't pronounce that other one. Now that last word. The track that comes next is Back in Baby's Arms by Patsy Cline. I'm not really familiar with Patsy Cline, to be honest. The track that comes after that is Taboo Edit by Peter Gabriel and Nusrat Fateh, Ali Khan. Peter Gabriel is the one who I'm somewhat familiar with. The track that's next is Sex is Violent. This has samples from Ted Just Admitted by Jane's Addiction, and I Put a Spell on You by Diamanda Gallus. The track that's after that is History Repeats Itself by AOS. This is an edited version for the soundtrack. What comes next is Something I Can Never Have, edited and extended by Nine Inch Nails. The only thing better than having one Nine Inch Nails song on a soundtrack is having two. What comes after that is I'll Take You Home by Russell Means. Russell portrayed Warren Red Cloud in the movie. What follows is Drums a Go-Go by the Hollywood Persuaders. Here's an edit made for the soundtrack. The next track is Hungry Ants. This has samples from Checkpoint Charlie and Violation of Expectation by Barry Adamson. After that is The Day the N-Word Took Over by Dr. Dre. Once again, I can't say the actual word. You know, this one has the A instead of the hard R. Next up is Born Bad by Juliette Lewis. The lyrics are written by Sissy Cobb. Up next is Fall of the Rebel Angels by Sergio Cervetti. This is an edit made for the soundtrack. We followed up with Fork Boy by Lard. This is actually track 1 on Lard's debut album, The Last Temptation of Raid. Maybe I should check out more from those guys at some point. That's followed by Batonga and Batongaville. This has samples from A Night on Bear Mountain by the Budapest Philharmonic Orchestra. Right after that is A Warm Place, edit by Nine Inch Nails. What's better than having 2 Nine Inch Nails songs on your soundtrack is having 3. The following track is Allah Mohammed Char Yar. This is the last track to have dialogue from the movie. The second to last track is The Future edit by Leonard Cohen. This is the second of 2 Leonard Cohen songs on the soundtrack. The outro for the soundtrack is What Would You Do by the Dog Pound. I lost track of the number of times I heard this song in Grand Theft Auto 5. When researching the soundtrack, I read that it peaked at number 19 on the Billboard 200 and number 14 in Australia and New Zealand. It is also certified gold in America and Canada, and silver in the UK. Ironically enough, it sold more copies in the UK compared to Canada. The critics absolutely loved the soundtrack. And now for my thoughts. I think this is a very good soundtrack. Trent Reznor absolutely knocked it out of the park when compiling and producing it. Apparently he produced the soundtrack using portable Pro Tools in his hotel room during his band's self-destruct tour. You gotta admit, that was a smart idea. Overall, I highly recommend this soundtrack. Now it's part where I question you. Have you listened to the soundtrack for Natural Born Killers? If so, what do you think about it? What's your favorite song from it? Have you seen the movie? Well, let me know in the comments. If you like the video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Be sure to press the notification bell to notify you of future videos. Thanks for watching, and I need to rewatch the movie.